Welcome back, everybody. Today, I want to talk about my top 3 best and worst bosses in Lies of P. So, how we're going to do this, we're going to be going back and forth from starting with the worst list and going to the best, just back and forth for the top 3. So, let's start this off with number 3 on the worst list, the Black Rabbit Brotherhood. You know my disdain for fighting multiple people in a boss fight at one time. This fight takes the cake, though. 4 people. 4 people attacking at once, using a mixture of ranged and melee attacks. In fact, this fight, from a very basic look at it, it isn't hard. The additional enemies don't have very high health and can be defeated relatively easily if fought one-on-one. When you have 3 of them, each with their own attack patterns and their own weapons, along with the main boss of the group that you're fighting at the same time, it is a recipe for pain. And there are times where the other people will jump in and then back out and stop fighting for just a little bit, and then come in out of nowhere to try to ambush you when you're in the middle of fighting another person. But the best part about this boss fight is that you fight the Black Rabbit Brotherhood a second time. And it's even more aggravating the second time. And to avoid any more spoilers than I already did, I'm going to just stop right there at talking about that boss fight, because it's that was painful. Number 3 on the best bosses list would be Archbishop Andreas, a boss so visually intimidating, yet you just can't take your eyes off of it. A boss that gets worse the more you look at it. Archbishop Andreas. For a creature so nasty looking, it is by far my favorite boss in the game from a visuals standpoint. This is the only boss I felt intimidated to fight, as it was just a giant, mutated looking bug thing. And once that second phase popped out and the second creature came out, I was ready to be done with the boss and never turn back. This was one of the easier boss fights, though, in my opinion, but it was still a lot of fun to play. Number 2 on the worst boss list would have to be Laxasia. Laxasia's first phase wasn't too bad. It was pretty easily, actually. It's the second phase that ends up being a real thorn in the rear end. Teleporting, lightning fast, flying around the arena. High in the air, mind you, so it's hard to see. Very little was liked about this fight. A mixture of all of this, along with lethal electric attacks, makes Laxasia a very stressful boss. It is the only boss that I had to use an NPC spirit to assist me. I wanted to try it out because this is my first boss I actually used it on. But, due to my luck, though, the spirit died almost immediately when the second phase started. So it was pretty much pointless, and I ended up fighting it alone anyways. Number 2 on the best boss list would have to be Romeo, the King of Puppets. My favorite thing about the Romeo boss is a combination of both phases. An intense boss with an intense scene around you as you fight. The first phase is relatively easy, even on the first attempt, actually. Attack windups are slow, and you can tell pretty quickly what type of attack that it's going to do. It's the second phase when things get wild, when Romeo comes out of the puppet robot. That's when the real fight starts. This guy is tough. If you can beat him quickly, it won't be as bad as it could be otherwise. Eventually, in the second phase of the fight, Romeo will do this insane combo attack that combos, I swear to you, close to 10 to 15 times. It's not as punishing as Millennia's waterfowl dance, but you can actually run away to avoid this or spam roll with very good timing. But this ability alone makes this boss super fun to take on, but at the same time, if you're not ready for it and you don't get the boss down quick enough, it can get very frustrating. This is one of those bosses you need to be aggressive with in order to try and prevent this combo attack. And here we are, number 1 on the worst boss list. The green monster of the swamp. Boy, this thing was a real treat to fight. The first phase of this fight was very hard. It took me about 20-30 tries to really learn the patterns of its moves, which made it much easier, and learn that fire completely melts it in this stage. It's when the second stage starts, that's when you better pucker up for the misery that's about to occur in the arena. This monster takes control of a destroyed puppet mech and now learns moves from bosses that you defeated in previous boss fights. In theory, though, since it uses moves mainly from bosses that you've beaten, it doesn't seem too hard. However, now that it has a large pool of moves that it just now learned, it becomes very hard to determine what attack it is going to do, making it very challenging to predict when to dodge or block. And should I also mention that it performs these moves in a faster manner than the boss it's mimicking, so you have to be fast when avoiding them. Also, it's no longer weak to fire. So there's that. The last boss on this list for the best bosses in Lies of P is the Nameless Puppet. This is truly a punishing final boss. Not just a final boss, though. It's a bonus, optional final boss. If you complete certain requirements throughout the game, you will get the ability to fight the Nameless Puppet. At any point between your deaths, you can give up and end the game's story if you struggle bad enough. What makes this boss so challenging is that of all the bosses in the game, this one is probably the most aggressive boss, and it does not give you much breathing room between attacks. This fight is very dependent on being patient and mastering blocking, dodging, avoiding, pretty much the final test to show your skill that you've learned throughout the game. You will most likely not be able to hit it more than once or twice before needing to dodge its next attack. Its attacks are fast, it can combo you, and they do a lot of damage. Once again, though, you don't get much breathing room between its bursts, so if you take a lot of damage during the fight, you better time those heals very carefully. And with that, that was the top 3 best and worst bosses, in my opinion, of course, in Lies of P. Let me know in the comments what you guys think, which bosses you liked and which bosses you didn't like. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.